Good afternoon and welcome back to the Howell Business Beat. I am Dianne Samples with the Howell Area Chamber of Commerce, and I am joined with Janelle Best, president of the Howell Area Chamber of Commerce. And today we are really excited to kind of delve into the world of mindfulness matters with Terry Bean from trybean.com. He specializes in giving clever advice and some life-altering directions, and he specializes in the practice of mindfulness matters. And we're just really excited to kind of take this journey down the path of that being present in the moment and how that can improve our lives and improve our business.
I love it. Thank you for having me. This is going to be a fun conversation, and we may actually learn some stuff too.
I sure hope so.
Yes,
I could use that. As we talk about mindfulness and being present, here I am. I didn't know my right from my left before we got started, right?
You were so close, though. I mean, you were almost there.
It was there. It was floating in my subconscious.
It was. You did figure it out, though. You were the one that pointed out you went right instead of left.
Right. I can take accountability for that
that's
piece of it. Right.
You totally owned it. I love that piece.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Terry. We're pleased to have you on our show today, and I'm excited to learn a lot more about these creative tips and tricks that you have to offer.
Fun. Let's go.
All right. Well, to kick us off, I want to really understand your career path and how you got to where you are today.
Oh man, like everybody, I fell totally ass backwards into this. Isn't that how everybody does everything?
I call it a happy accident.
It's a happy accident. Okay, I like that part too. That's probably a lot cleaner and more polite. So I was a sales guy. My dad, when I was in high school, actually when I was in college, he said, "What are you going to do with your life?" I went to Eastern Michigan. I chose that school because they had a great business program and they had a great education program. I thought I was going to teach or get into business. And we took a psych class in my second semester, realized that I was totally messed up. I was like, I got to take more of these classes. By the time I was finished, I realized that everybody's messed up. So that felt like relief to me. Had enough credits left over, majored in communications as well. Figured if I knew how people thought and could communicate effectively with them, I'd be decent in business. So my dad kept bugging me about computers. You got to get into computers. It's the wave of the future. Everybody's going to be doing computers. And so I sold computers. I sold training. I sold networks. I sold IT people and did that for 10 years. Through that time, I built up an interesting network, realized that growing your business through networking was a really good way to go. You get the right relationships. You get the right referrals. Right opportunities come. Ended up starting a very large networking group here in the Detroit area called Motor City Connect. We used to run some groups. You probably know Sandy Mackey and Al Curtis. I think they were fairly prominent between Brighton and Howell. And so we used to run meetings at their place, Insights Group, way back in the before time. And, so all of those things, all of those experiences led to me becoming a speaker. Becoming a speaker led to me becoming a coach. And because people are like, "Hey, how do we get more?" I'm like, "Well, let me coach you." And so that's kind of the career progression over the last 30 years. It's not quite 30, but it feels like it.
The last 3 feel like 30.
Yeah, no kidding.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It really does. And I do my best to have fun in every single interaction because why not?
Exactly. Life's too short not to. Well, that's exciting. I know it's interesting how I love hearing how people's careers evolve and how they kind of, like you said, fall ass backwards into something.
It's a technical term
I
from
love
the
it.
IT days, yeah.
We learn a lot of those on this
Very much so.
show.
Absolutely. No, it is. It's kind of what happens, right? All of a sudden you think you're going this way and then something knocks on your door. And if you're aware and paying attention, you may actually open that door and like what walks in. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, I do this now. I'm a big fan of having flexibility, right? You're really clear on where you want to go, right? Be really, really clear on where you want to go. Be completely open as to how you get there.
Well, that kind of falls into your mantra of prioritizing your happiness in your professional life.
Absolutely.
So finding what you like to do and figuring out how to incorporate that into what you have to do to make a living.
And do as much of it as possible. Right? I don't think I've done a presentation in the last 10 years where at some point during the talk, I don't say, I'm just here for my amusement. I'm glad you're all enjoying this too. Right? Because it's totally true. It amuses me. And I like to do things that do that.
Awesome. What are the things that you teach? So, I mean, you coach, you teach, and you have a lot of really good takeaways. So what are some kind of examples and things that you might be able to share with us today as, you know, you work with individuals and businesses on a really regular and consistent basis? What does that look like?
So for me, it really starts with asking good questions, right? And the reality is, I don't care who's listening in the audience, you probably need to get better at asking good questions. And while you're working on asking better questions, make sure you're also working on listening. Because so often we ask people something, you know, think about it when you're in the street. We pass by somebody, hey, how's your day going? And before they finish the sentence, we're already 15 feet away, right? So ask questions only if you're going to listen to the answer. You know, so I teach that. Almost every single presentation I give, there's a section on those two things because I think those skills are both underutilized and super important. You know, but to take it a level deeper, Diane, you hit on it earlier. It's find what makes your heart sing. What is going to make you want to kick the bed sheets off every single morning and race to work? Because the idea that Mondays suck is only because you're doing stuff you don't like.
I mean, of the people that you work with and you've been coaching, I'm curious as to your thoughts on how many people you think are doing that? How many people you think are living in that life of, you know, that the Monday dread? What do they call it? The Monday scaries. Or Sunday scaries, yeah.
Sunday scaries.
Sunday
There's a
scaries.
term for that. There we go. All of these technical
Sunday scaries.
terms.
Oh, yes.
I love it. I think the vast majority of people live in the Sunday scaries.
And
right?
why? Like, why is that?
75%. Because we don't do the work up front to figure out who we are. Right? There's a calling so deep inside of each and every one of us that maybe somebody well-meaning but unintendedly cut out a long time ago. An aunt said you couldn't sing. Somebody said, wow, you're dancing like a fool. Somebody said, oh, you know what? You're probably not that funny. You know, whatever the case may be, somebody extinguished that light because we're not overly nice to each other as a rule, right? So kindness is another thing I preach and practice and share all the time. But it's one of those things where you've got the thing inside of you that if you didn't take the time to discover what it was, what that true gift is, then you're going to miss out. I tell people all the time, you know, you'll know you found your true calling when not only do you love what you do, but people are happy to write you a check for it.
I love that.
But how do you approach those people who know what they want to do? I mean, they have that passion. They are 100% solid. They know that this is what I want to do, but they can't figure out how to put it into action where it's actually something that can pay the bills or make people happy to write a check to them. They have that desire, but it just seems like that would be so frustrating. And I know that there's people out there, and it's that, how do you
monetize it?
How do you monetize it? No, so those are great questions. So rule number one is don't burn bridges, right? You never know who's going to be there to support you when you need it. The other thing is don't burn the boats. So often people are like, that's it. I'm tired of this. I'm going to go live my passion and I'm going to start right now. No, don't do that. Work your 9 to 5, go home, work your 5 to 9, and eventually that 5 to 9 replaces that 9 to 5. And we're using just random hours, but the reality is you're going to have some kind of support to do what you really want to do. And that support can come from your network, it can come from your friends, it can come from your family, it can come from past clients, whatever the case may be. But you're going to need that support system because getting started in your own entrepreneurial venture takes two things. One, way more time than you expected, and two, way more money than you expected. And it's consistent across the board. Even if somebody hires you, you know, I've got lots of clients that their first client was their former employer. And that's great. And sometimes they even pay you more as a consultant or as a contractor than they did as an employee. But they're probably not going to keep you forever. And as a single shingle individual, you're the chief cook, bottle washer, you're the one that's invoicing, you're the one that's creating the work, you're the one that's doing the work, you're the one that's, you know, trying to follow up and get paid for the work. So operationally in sales take a lot of time. So you got to figure out how to do both of them exceedingly well, or even better, outsource the one you like least.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the naysayers. It's interesting. Atlas of the Heart. I don't know if you've read it or if you're a fan of Brene Brown, but she calls them candle blower outers.
Yeah, that's a great term for it, because that's it, right? Lay, you know what? My light's not bright, so I'm going to extinguish yours. I haven't read or really even listened to any Brene Brown, but anytime I see like a meme with a quote of hers, I'm like, this lady gets it.
She does. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things, and she used that analogy to talk about, you know, how to build your network and how to surround yourself with the people that are going to fuel your flame versus be the ones that are going to blow it out, and how you have to protect that flame.
100%, right? You've got to find people that are on a similar path. They don't have to be doing the same thing, but their goals have to be of the same ilk as yours, right?
Absolutely.
Their effort does, the things they're doing do.
Yes. And, you know, and you think about, you mentioned goals and reaching and striving to achieve those goals. But on that path, you know, there's always going to be failure. So, you know, can we talk a little bit about why failure is important?
We dissect failure, right? What went wrong way more than we dissect what went right.
Why do we do that?
I was just going to say, why is that?
Because it is so true. You do like a debriefing, and it's, you know, kind of where all you're looking at is, okay, what do we need to do better? Instead of going into the conversation with, we just totally rock this. I mean, this is what we do very, very well. Yeah. And then have that be the primary focus, and then go into, but there's because there's always things that can be done better. But why do we lead with that?
Because we don't want to fail, right? We're so afraid of failure. We put such a negative stigma on failure in our society that we succeed in public, we fail in private. And the reality is, if you learn something, you'll never fail, right? If you learn what not to do, that's still better than not knowing, right? So that fear of failure stops us from trying. That stopping trying means that we're not getting any farther than we were yesterday, right? And so we have to say failure is fuel for forward momentum, right? And we have to look at it as such.
So how do you work with businesses or individuals to leverage that, to really put forth that momentum? And what are some of the tricks that you share with people?
Yeah, I love it. My father was phenomenal at seeing different angles of a situation. And so if I'd said a thing, he would say, well, did you think about this or that or this other thing? And dang near every situation. And as a result, I got really, really good at looking at things from different perspectives. So I always check my clients, right? You say you want to go this way. Not only am I going to ask why, I'm going to ask, what do you expect to find when you get there? What do you think you're going to run into along the way? What's going to be the biggest hurdle? What do you think is going to be really easy? And we kind of do that. You know, we talked about dissecting failure after. We call that a postmortem. It's kind of like a premortem, right? You do it beforehand, and you start to see things from a different perspective. And when you look at things from a different perspective, what you end up seeing becomes different as well, right? If we don't like the results, change how you look at them. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, you know what? This wasn't that bad at all. And so it's really, I go back to the questions in the listening from earlier. those things become really, really important. You know, just change how you think about things and the results will change too. So that's step one.
All right. I think that's definitely a challenge for most. I think that sometimes too, I'm wondering, you know, it's great to have that diversity of perspective and diversity of thought. And I think that that's such an added value to any team or any, really anything in life when you can apply that to it. But I think sometimes too, it can be looked at as like, well, why are you poking holes in this? Or why, you know, I think that it could really cause a lot of people to be on the defense. So how do you navigate that?
You tell them that this isn't personal, this is business, right? We have to separate ourselves from what we're doing. It's funny, I was having a conversation on the way over here about the gentleman's looking at writing a book about the unification of our business persona and our actual person, right? Because so often we morph those or we compartmentalize them. There's really only two types of people, right? There's the people that are the same person everywhere you go and everywhere you meet them in every interaction. And then there's people that wear their business mask, right? Let's call it a mask. And people that are, you know, take that mask off and be who they really are. The goal is to be who you authentically are 24/7.
Because that being that your authentic self, I mean, in every situation, that's what draws people to you.
100%.
And if someone's able, like you said, if they are able to see you put that mask on and then see it come off in a different situation, how are they building that trust with you when you're
a chameleon?
Exactly. When you're just going to become whatever they need you to be in that moment to make them happy versus what maybe they need you to be to make them successful.
That's it. And so it's the idea of just kind of staying that consistent self. Now, the challenge is some people don't like themselves, right? And it's partly because they're not being themselves. Now, maybe they haven't done the work to figure out who they are. That's a big one. Or maybe they just got so accustomed to being the person that people expected them to be that they got rewarded through that and they don't like that person. And that sucks, right? But people are living that way every single day.
Is that kind of where the evolution of the Mindfulness Matters movement is going, where it's accepting who you are and it's being present in that moment to continue to grow as that person you are? And it seems like that's kind of like the old school and the new school.
That's it.
Like there was always, you know, you were at work, you were expected to be a certain way, perform a certain way. And then when you were in your personal life, then you could be who you are, fun, this, or however it is. And now it's morphing those two together and realizing that it's one and the same.
Well,
you can't be two different people.
This is why boomers and millennials don't get along, right? Because boomers were taught a certain way and millennials aren't having it at all, right? Millennials are like, no, this is who I am. I drove around town for a couple of years and my license plate read NOWHOUR. And, you know, I got all kinds of guesses and the most common one was, whoa, now hour, that makes sense. I got one that was no, which is also very good advice, right? Let's be honest, good advice. But it really stood for know who you are, right? Because I want people to do that deep dive.
Yeah. So this is something, because you've brought this up a couple times about people doing the work. That's step one. What does that look like? So
step one is to sit down, get really, really quiet, and ask yourself a simple question. Who am I at my happiest? All right. When things are going really well, how am I behaving? What am I doing? What am I bringing into the interaction? Right? How do I show up? Right? And then or you can do it the other way. Who am I when I'm most miserable? Because a lot of times we don't find what we want by searching for what we want. We find it by doing the opposite of things we don't want. I know I can't stand this. What's the opposite of that? Okay, well, start there, right? That's a good place to start. And so that helps people figure it out a little faster, because I think to your point, it isn't easy work. We're all in a rush, right? How often do you hear about how busy everybody is these days? And let's be real clear, busy, where's my camera? Busy is not productive, right? They're two different things.
Very true.
They're two different things. But there was a line in the TV show Modern Family years ago where Phil was trying to get everybody to exit the house in a fake fire drill. And he said, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So what we really want to do a lot of times is slow down to go faster. Mm-hmm. And it's counterintuitive for obvious reasons, but it really, really helps. That's why self-care has become such an important movement lately, right? We cannot fill from an empty cup. Mm-hmm. Put your safety mask on first on the airplane is advice, because you can't save the person next to you if you're dead, mm-hmm. right? So,
and if you don't fill your own cup, you have nothing left to fill anyone else's cup.
Right?
But that's hard. That's hard. That first step is very hard. It's hard to sit
people don't do it.
And be quiet in your own mind, or at least for me it is.
100%. And I think there's this misnomer that, if you're practicing meditation, that all of a sudden everything's still and there's no thoughts. BS.
Yeah,
right?
That's when they all come flooding in, right?
Yeah, you're like...
the crazy really opens up.
Yeah.
I didn't know my brain could handle this much. Uh-huh. But it's the idea, mindfulness isn't like stillness necessarily, as much as it is, I'm going to acknowledge this thought, I'm going to thank it for what it's trying to bring me, and then I'm going to send it on its merry little way. So often we're carrying all this baggage around. We carry it into every interaction. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big fan of saying, no, take your baggage, wrap it up, shift it into some corner of your mind, be happy to go visit it whenever you need it. But for God's sake, don't carry it with you all the time. And we've all got it. We all got tons of it. But most of it really falls under the category, as Jack Canfield would say, of so what, right? Parents were divorced. Dad used to beat me. Dad was a drunk, moved several schools, with a survivor of incestual relationships or sexual abuse, whatever the case may be. All of these things have happened to an innumerable amount of people, and some people decided to say, so what, and move forward. I've got a bigger mission, right? Who I was isn't who I am.
Mm-hmm. And that seems to go against principles too, because sometimes you're told that you have to dissect it. You have to figure out the meaning or where it stems from. And then you spend hours and hours and hours going over it and over it and over it, where that just keeps it there.
That keeps it front of
mind.
Right. But
it's not ignoring it. It's not acknowledging it. It's just saying, okay, it happened. Here it is. Let's put it away because I can't change it.
That's right.
And then move forward.
That's exactly it. And I'm not saying you don't dissect it,
mm-hmm.
right? Because you're going to dissect
mm-hmm.
it. But I'm going to say that there is a point where the learning from it has happened, and you're not going to learn anymore by bringing it up again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
You're only going to put people off, and you're going to put your future off. So don't do it. Just let it go. And when you need to, right, there's going to be moments when everything goes sideways and you're like, I'm a whatever. Go back and visit that crap, right? If mm-hmm. you want to wallow in self-crapulence, you know exactly where it is. Go bring it out. Set it on the floor. Sort through it for a little while. But don't let that moment carry over into your next moment. That's what we talked about being present earlier.
Yeah, easier said than done,
mm-hmm.
right?
Sure. But like everything that you've ever gotten really good at, it takes practice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And oh boy, lots of it.
So do you coach on the mindfulness piece of that? Like the meditation and
I'm not qualified to coach meditation, right? I'm qualified to tell you to start and tell you how to start, but I'm not.
And is that something you practice yourself then?
I got to the point where I could meditate at a stoplight.
Okay. Look at that. So practice.
Yeah.
And you'll do it so well that you don't even realize you're doing it.
That's exactly it. You know, it's funny because the shift in consciousness, once you really realize what it is, you're already like right up against it, right? You're right there, and it changes a little bit. You know, I've had experiences when I'm floating in the lake off of my paddleboard where, you know, it's like hallucinogenic. That's not what happens at a stoplight by any stretch of the imagination, right?
I'd hope not.
That's not what happens there. But it's, for the most part, it's really just allowing a different perspective and a different way of seeing things that becomes really, really meaningful.
And it's that clarity. It's that piece where things start to fall into place. You have that aha moment, and it clicks, and you
use the right word. It's peace. So it's that peace that ultimately all of us are searching for, right? And you know I laugh about this, on my arm, supposedly tattooed. I don't read Chinese, so I can't prove that it really says what I think it says, but it says harmony. Because 25 years ago, when people were talking about balance, I realized that balance means that nothing's really moving. Everything's even. What we really should be striving for is harmony, right? Because we're all dealing with multiple things, and we have to have them interacting harmoniously. We talk about the roles that we shift through, and moms and working mothers in particular seem to have more roles than everybody else. You know, I look at what my wife gets done in a day, and I look at what I get done in the day, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm really knocking it out. And she's like 87 tasks ahead of me every single day. And it's tough. And, you know, I remind her to feed herself too, because she has to. Mm-hmm. So note for the ladies.
I love that. I will second that. And that's a really good thought. I'm curious, you know, we talked a lot about individuals. How do you work with organizations, or how does this translate into organizations and that whole ecosystem? And what is the impact that you've seen it have on organizations that are doing it really, really well? You
know, it changes the culture, right? So it changes the energy inside of the four walls. If you know, typically I'm brought into a C-suite somewhere, right? The owner says, I need help. Right. And I've changed who I've gone after over time as an ideal client, because I used to just want to work with owners, but I now only want to work with people that I deem have a seventh gear, right? If you remember 5-speed manual transmissions, and a super sports car would have a 6-speed in it, I want the one that has that 7th speed, because they're the ones that are going to actually take the advice, take the information, act on it, execute it, and then say, give me more. And it's really frustrating coaching people who you identify the problem, they agree that it's a problem, you give them some kind of prescription to fix that problem, and they don't do any of the things. And then 2 months later, they're writing you a check saying, this isn't working. Well, you're not working. You know, but they
have to be able to put in the work.
They got to do the work, right? It's funny how every single conversation we had has come back to do the work. Right? It's kind of what it is.
And it's not easy, you know?
It's not very easy, but it's usually worth it.
Rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah, very rewarding.
So how do you inspire them to do the work? It's easy to, like you said, it's easy to bring someone in and say, you should do this, 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 and this, and then walk away and come back and nobody's done anything.
Right. I like to paint a picture, and more importantly, I like to help them paint a picture that they really want to see themselves in. And so we have to then realize that to put yourself into that picture, these are the steps you have to get there. So it's really the most simple thing is, how do you look at this big thing and then break it into bite-sized steps? Things that you can do on a daily or weekly basis to 3 months down the road have achieved this goal, right? So if you know that you want to sell a product and it's going to take you 500 phone calls to get to the 50 people that'll have the conversation so you can close 5 of them, right? Well, then 500 phone calls is a daunting task, right? You're never going to make 500 phone calls, but you could make 5 a day. Right? You could make 10 a day relatively easily. So focus on, I'm going to make 50 phone calls this week, and then do it again next week. It's usually rinse and repeat. You know, but none of it happens if you're like, well, I'm going to make 500 phone calls a day. No, you're not. And then you're just going to beat yourself up. You're going to feel shame because you didn't do your thing. And then tomorrow's going to have bled over from your failure from yesterday.
And we are all so guilty of doing that, those exaggerated expectations where 100%. I don't know why we do that to ourselves.
We do it all the time. But hey, at least we're consistent.
Right. We know what to expect.
Yes, there you go.
Well, that's fantastic. I appreciate you really sharing a little bit more about what you do. It's just so fascinating, and I think that like we said, it's hard work, but it's really rewarding. And I'd love to learn a little bit more because I know you have a book coming out. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak on that as well.
Oh, I like that one. It's out, so that part's good. Okay. And I apologize had I been a better person and showed up on time and all that stuff and brought copies. I would have done that. But I can email you a link.
Perfect. Absolutely.
So the book is called Finding Harmony in the, we'll call it F's for this particular show. It's Finding Harmony in the F's you give. Now, y'all can assume what F stands for, and you're probably exactly right. And it was honestly written because my daughter went through some trials and tribulations as a 19-year-old, 20-year-old young lady at college. I'm not going to get into the details, but tons and tons of trauma led her to having a couple of episodes, seizures in particular. She's not epileptic, but couldn't speak, couldn't formulate words. And I did the only thing I knew that I could do. I started writing essays on how to look at things differently, right? This whole conversation, how do you change your perspective so you can change your reality? And about the 15th or so one, it was called Finding Harmony in the F's You Give. And I said, that would be a great title for a book. And she laughed.
Catches your eye.
Yeah. And I laughed and I was like, do you think this would help people? And she said, I've never learned this stuff, which was like a dagger to my heart because I'm like, dude, I've been modeling this behavior your entire life. What are you talking about? And it dawned on me, I didn't actually use those words with her, but it dawned on me that I never connected the dots as to why the behavior, the thought process, the action, the alignment matters, right? So you can show somebody something over and over and over again. But if you don't loop them into why it's important, they're going to miss out on that. And so that's what happened. So I said, all right, 2 months later, there was a book out. And so you can find that book, and some of the lessons we've shared today are certainly in it, but there's all kinds of write-ups and videos about it. findingharmonybook.com. Very, very cleverly hidden. Or you can find it on my website at tribean.com. But findingharmonybook.com takes you right to the little write-up and then where you buy it.
Excellent. And then if businesses want to reach out to you to learn more about the services you can offer, they can reach you at tribean.com as well.
That would be amazing. Please do. You're invited. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of insight with us and how we can be more mindful in our everyday and how that really just ripples into all that we do.
I love that. That's my favorite thing, right? Is I did a TED Talk, Cast a Positive Stone, and it's all about creating that positive ripple in other people's day.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you, Terry. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.